Hey folks, here we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Kill Merlin, and it's from Schumann Family Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out even more information than I could possibly tell you here. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, Kill Merlin is a competitive game. In this game, the character of Merlin is a powerful wizard, just like in other iterations of him in fantasy fiction. But in this case, he has let all that power go to his head, and he's basically become an evil tyrant. Sometimes he does nice things, usually he doesn't, and all of the people in the land are getting sick of being oppressed by him. So you and the other players are aspiring wizards yourself. You're almost to the level of Merlin, but Merlin being out there is keeping you down as well. So one of you has to come through and kill Merlin, save the land, but more importantly for the purposes of the game, become basically the head wizard yourself. Maybe you'll become the new oppressor too if you choose to go that route. So in gameplay terms, what you're trying to do here is put together a very powerful spell that is powerful enough to kill Merlin, hence the name of the game. But it's easier said than done, of course. You have to learn the different types of spells. You have to keep the other players from interfering with your ability to learn those spells. You have to keep Merlin from interfering with your ability to do that. And you need to store up enough mana, which is the energy of the game, in order to pull it all off. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype copy of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here may change in the final version, and that is exactly why you should go to the Kickstarter page to find out more information. But then in any event, we will come back and discuss it further. Kill Merlin is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. Each player is an aspiring wizard who has decided to try and kill the evil wizard Merlin in order to save the land and supplant him as the greatest wizard of the land. Doing that is easier said than done, as you'll need to learn 4 different elemental spells and combine them together using a secret formula, then spend a huge amount of mana. If you are the player who can pull this off, you'll win the game. Set up the game by laying out the main game board. Each quadrant of the board is keyed to one of the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, and wind. In each of those areas, you will lay out 6 corresponding spells of that element randomly and face up. Spells serve 2 purposes. During the course of the game, if you have learned a spell, you can then spend mana to cast it according to the amount on the card. Spells have a variety of effects, like moving wizard pawns, gathering mana, or stealing it from other players, and gaining ingredients or taking them from other players. Each one can be cast either at the beginning or end of a turn, or both, and you'll also need to spend the indicated ingredients to initially learn that spell. Don't worry, we'll get to all of that in a moment. The other purpose of spells is to kill Merlin. Every player gets a random secret formula card at the beginning of the game that is kept hidden from the other players. It will tell you which 4 spells you need to learn to kill Merlin by indicating different spell card slots on the board. We'll get to that later too. In the bottom center of the board is where you'll place ingredients. Shuffle the deck, deal 3 out to each player face down, and then place 3 face up on the board, discarding and replacing them if there are ever any doubles. Then place the rest of the deck nearby with space for a discard pile. There are 10 different ingredients which you'll need to use to learn spells. Of special note is the Mimic, which is basically a wild card for ingredients. There is also a deck of Merlin cards. After every player has had a turn in the round, Merlin will act and you will flip over a Merlin card and do what it says. These are chaotic cards that will usually harm 1 or more players in some way, like forcing them to move their wizard tokens, discard ingredients, or lose mana, though in some very rare instances they can help 1 or more of the players. Finally, for the board, make a pile of mana tokens in different denominations and lay the dice nearby. Give each player 5 mana to start with. Lastly, give each player a set of wizard pawns with little hats you can put on them to indicate being charged. Don't worry, there are also optional tokens you can use instead of the wizard pawns. Randomly decide who goes first and begin. The first player places the Merlin's turn token to his right to remind people of when Merlin will act. Each player's turn goes through 4 phases and, if you're lucky, a game-ending 5th phase. The first phase is your chance to cast a spell at the beginning of the turn, if the spell is allowed to be cast at the beginning. You first need to have a charged wizard token on the spell and deplete it by taking the hat off. Then you need to pay the mana cost. You can't use a depleted wizard token to cast a spell later, and it's very rare to be able to recharge a wizard token. Therefore, you must be extra cautious with using spells. The second phase is to roll for mana. Simply roll both dice and take that many mana tokens. In the third phase, you can buy up to 3 ingredients and learn spells, in any order. Buying a revealed ingredient on the board costs 2 mana and is replaced immediately, while blind drawing from the deck costs you 1. There still must never be duplicates in the lineup, and your hand limit is 5. To learn a spell, you must pay 3 mana and discard ingredients that are listed on the card. Put a charged wizard token on the card, which means it's wearing its hat. You need to follow adjacency rules for this. First off, unless you're using a special effect, your first purchase spell in an elemental quadrant must be one of the 2 cards closest to the center of the board. After that, you can learn more spells in that quadrant by branching off from there orthogonally, but never diagonally. You must always place down a new token if you have any left. You can't just move a token from one spell to another unless an effect allows you to. If you do move a token, you instantly forget the spell that used to have your token. For the fourth phase, you get one last chance to cast a spell, again if it allows for end turn casting. Eventually, with luck and skill, you may be able to take one final phase during your turn, killing Merlin. If you have a wizard token on each corresponding spell that you need, as dictated by your secret formula, regardless of whether the tokens are charged or not, and if you have at least 20 mana saved up, then at the end of your turn, you can reveal your secret formula to the other players, prove to them that you actually have learned the appropriate spells, and exclaim, "And with that, I have killed Merlin," which will, of course, win you the game. Assuming that doesn't happen, though, on a normal turn, play will simply pass to the next player in order. When every player has had a turn in the round, then Merlin will have a go. Flip over a Merlin card and resolve it, which is usually a chaotic negative effect on all or some players. Make sure to take note when cards say, "Don't forget," as they tend to have pernicious effects, and also make note of cards that will reverse the order of play. Keep going until one player can finally kill Merlin. Absolutely, the thing that you have to take notice of first when you sit down to play Kill Merlin is how, unlike so many other games that it is. I mean, there are a lot of games where it's just like, we draw some cards and play them and, take that and you throw cards around, that type of stuff. In this case, it is mixing some of those kind of elements, but with a more strategic, actual board element to it. It's not as simple as just, I'm going to take this card from my hand and cast it, and that's that if I have the resources for it. You have to have this element of, first off, building up to the point where you can even learn the spell to begin with. You need the mana to cast it, but before that, you need the ingredients in order to learn it, and the mana to learn it, and then the mana to cast it if you even want to cast it. That's another interesting aspect of this, is that so you can learn the spell, and that's a whole other thing where you have to make sure that you sort of have to wend your way through, almost like you're reading through a tome of magic, from going from in to out and just learning them in a chain, building upon one another, and you do that with those wizard tokens. So you do that, then you can say, all right, well now I have these very powerful spells at my disposal. But remember, that's not your goal. Your goal is just to learn the spells to eventually be able to kill Merlin and just stockpile enough mana to do that. But of course, you're going to be constantly interfered with. The Merlin cards themselves are going to screw you up and move tokens around in reverse order of play, and take mana from you, take ingredients from you. But then the other players, if they decide to cast their spells, can do the same to you as well. So it's not going to be easy enough. It's not going to be that easy to just learn the spells. At some point, you're going to have to make the decision, I'm going to need to cast one of these spells that I've learned. But essentially, you only get one usage of each spell that you learn. there are some very rare effects that can cause you to recharge your wizard token. And there's that interesting spatial element of, like, if you use them, using the wizard tokens with the little hat to indicate that. There are some rare things that can replenish your ability to do that, but you can never count on them. You must assume that you're going to get one shot at using this, and even if you move that token around, it's already depleted. You just learned something else. You just learned it, not use it. And so there's an interesting scarcity effect in play with that. And it also forces you to think, okay, I need to learn these 4 spells, but are they really going to be that helpful to me? Maybe I need to learn another spell first and count on myself being able to move to the cards that I actually need to kill Merlin later on, because I just can't pass up being able to use these abilities during the course of the game, either to protect myself or against the other players. These are all things you need to worry about. And yet, as I say all of this, it's important to note that Kill Merlin is a very straightforward game. It is easy to set up, it's easy to teach, it's fast to teach. You probably got that from my preview section. It's not an overly complex game to explain to people. So there is layers of strategy there, but it's also so straightforward and easy to learn that I think that casual gamers could potentially enjoy it. Players who want a little more meat on their games could enjoy it as well, and people who are in the middle. So, with all that said, it really comes down to, are you looking for a more unique game experience? Are you looking for an experience that, but it still has like a fantasy element to it, but also a unique fantasy element, because most games just have Merlin as a side character, or as a character you control, who's a good guy, in quotes, but not in this game for sure. So you have that fantasy theme that is a unique fantasy theme with the gameplay that doesn't really look like any other game out there, and that's bound to appeal to some people. And if you're one of those people, or if you know someone in your gaming group who would enjoy Kill Merlin, listen, you don't need to take my word for any of this. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page and find even more information, pledge levels, bonuses, and rewards, and all those different things. Go to the Kickstarter page by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Kill Merlin from Schumann Family Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.